Okay, Christina. So today we're going to talk about literary triangles, okay, let's not call them rhetorical triangles. Talk about literary triangles and how we are able to analyze a text. You may be thinking to yourself, why exactly are we using a poem when the class is about nonfiction, etc.? Well, I kind of think that this poem sets the tone, so its content is pertinent to what we're talking about. And it's also very good to it's a good piece to distinguish between the difference between rhetorical appeals and looking at people don't use pathos, logos, etc. So I like to get around that with a fiction piece first. So you'll see what I mean in just a second here. So apologies if my cat's over in the background. So the very first thing when we're reading a poem or difficult text, what I like to do to train for close reading is I like to have three different colors in front of me. So you can use highlighters, pens, etc. I have a blue, a green, and a red here in front of me. And I'm going to use these for each of my different readings. Okay. So my first reading, I'll probably just use a blue, whatever color is up to you. And I'm going to read this through. I'm going to bring you through my thought process. It might be helpful for you to read the poem first on your own, and kind of as you're doing that, you may want to question mark things that you don't understand. You can put an exclamation by things that are like just really that you think catch your interest, and then star anything that you think is important. These are basic annotations. Okay, so the first time through, you can just kind of go through and do this. And what I'm going to do for things I don't understand is I'm going to highlight them in different colors too. I'm going to underline them so that you can see my thought process as I go through. All right. So let me just put this on very quickly. Notifications are popping up on my computer, so I'm trying to take those off. There we go. All right. So very first thing is, as I go through this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create what's called a soapstone. I think Miss McCloskey got you familiar with this last year. I might do it a little bit differently. Or maybe over the summer you're not quite familiar with it as you were. So this is just speaker, occasion. If I'm spelling that wrong, apologies. Often spelling isn't my strong suit. Audience, purpose, speaker. Oh, so we have speaker, occasion, audience, purpose, subject. I tend to get these reversed. It doesn't matter what order you put them in. And then tone. Okay, so you have those there. And as I go through and I struggle through these, what is the occasion, what's going on, possibly when was this written as well. So right here, our title kind of gives this to us, 1976. But we also want to know what's going on for this to be written. Audience, to whom is this addressed? Purpose, why does the speaker or author, write this poem? What is the tone? And tone, I like to define as the speaker, and this is not necessarily the author, but the speaker's attitude towards this subject. So what is the speaker's attitude towards the subject? And now there can be multiple tones, there can be shifts in tone, especially in poem, there could be subtones and undertones. In this case, because we're just getting into it, we're just going to go for the basic tone. So as we read this poem, if you've read it already the first time, like I suggested, using these three, then you might have some of this filled out. But I'm going to read this through 3 times and kind of figure out what's going on. My first time, I'm going to underline in blue things I don't understand. Alright, so for Julia in the deep water, the instructor we hire, because she does not love you, leads you into the deep water, the deep end, where the water is darker. Her open, encouraging arms that never get nearer are merciless for your sake. All right, so the instructor we hire, and I'm taking this through my thought process as I'm doing this. So the instructor, so something's going on. This is some sort of instructor, and there's some sort of we that he's talking about, or she's talking about. We can't assume that John Morris is the speaker here. It could be different than the author. And there's hiring going on. But the instructor is definitely a she. So I want to know what kind of instructor this is. And apparently, she does not love you. There is a you. So the speaker in the poem is addressing someone. Leads you into the deep water. Now, if we were doing a poetry analysis on this, we were doing a TP cast, and I ask you, what do you think in the deep water means? And so that question is pertinent here too. Is leads you into the deep water, the deep end where the water is darker. All right, so this is some water imagery, maybe an ocean, maybe a pool. I tend to think that this is a pool because it says the deep end. Is there a deep end of the ocean? There might be, or like a swimming hole. That's possible. Where the water is darker. Her open, encouraging arms that never get nearer are merciless for your sake. That just kind of sticks out to me, like, what does that mean, never get nearer? Okay, and they're merciless for your sake. That has me thinking, like, okay, you're being merciless, but it's for your sake. Again, there's a speaker who's addressing this you. We're not sure who the you is, and we did something. The speaker is one person, but there is another person involved in that we. Next stanza. You will dream this water always. You will dream this water always. Interesting. Where nothing draws nearer, wasting your valuable breath, you will scream for your mother. Only your mother is drowning, forever in the thin air down at the deep end. She is doing nothing. She never did anything harder. And I am beside her. Okay, so some clues starting to come through here is, okay, you will dream this water always. That's really weird. I don't know what that means right now, if this is my first read through. Of course, I read the poem and I've done this poem before, so I know what's going on, but as a first read, that's kind of what is going on here. Where nothing draws nearer. Okay, so this person that the speaker is speaking to will dream this water always where nothing draws nearer. Okay, so this might be some sort of dream. I might draw some Z's here like a sleeping dream. Wasting your valuable breath, you will scream for your mother. Alright, why is she screaming? I don't know yet. Only your mother is drowning. Okay, the mother is drowning too. This is interesting. So, at this point I'm starting to put some things together. I'm going, okay, so the poem's title is For Julia in the Deep Water. So I have a hunch that this you that this person is speaking to, the speaker speaking to, is Julia. So I think that this is pretty much what's going on at this point. So then I get down here, and the mother is also drowning. So perhaps Julia's mother is drowning, but she's not drowning in a pool in the deep water. She's at the deep end. So we know she's there, but she's not drowning in a pool. She's drowning forever in thin air. Okay, what does that mean? What is it, forever, and how can you drown in the air? Okay, let's talk about that and let's table that. So, what is this? On my second read through, I would come back and I'm gonna kind of like figure out if I can see what's going on. Okay, she is doing nothing. Okay, so she's drowning. She's not doing anything. But not doing anything is the hardest thing she's ever done. Okay, what does that mean? So, in literature or in English class, in rhetorical, figure of language, an oxymoron is something, well, this is not an oxymoron, but it's oxymoronic, or paradoxical would probably be a better term for it. Um, yeah, let's do paradoxical. So a paradox is something that's true and untrue at the same time. Like if she's doing nothing, she can't do anything, but she's never done anything harder. Like that's a paradox. It's true and untrue at the same time. So I'm kind of wrestling with that in my mind. And I am beside her. Okay, so finally we have the speaker. And the speaker is beside the mother. So I'm just thinking in my head, 1976, traditional family structure, the instructor we hire, I am beside her, so I'm thinking this is probably the father, okay? So to me, I have a guess that this is the father who's the speaker. So I'm coming back over to my soapstone, and you're going to use soapstone more for prose, more for nonfiction, but this is still good to analyze this. So the father perhaps is the speaker. Last stanza, I'm going to go ahead and move my camera just a wee bit here. I am beside her in this imagination. Okay, so I am beside her, the father. What imagination is going on? I'm not quite sure yet. We are waiting where the water is darker. Okay, so the father and the mother maybe, F and M, just put it there. You are over your head, screaming. You are learning your way toward us. You are learning how in the helpless water, it is with our skill, we live in what kills us. Okay, so really powerful paradox here. Another paradox right at the end. You live in what kills us. We live in what kills us. So how can we live in something that kills us? Very interesting. All right, on my second time through, actually, I'm going to try and deduce some of the rest of these. So, who is my audience? Well, given by the title and the fact he's using the you, I'm guessing this is for Julia, that he's writing this to Julia. His purpose may not be so clear yet, and the subject may not be clear yet either. And if those aren't clear, we definitely can't get the tone of what's going on. So I'm going to switch over to my second color here in red. And this time through, I want to look at the things that are starting to make more sense on my second reading. Now that I have the whole poem internalized, I can kind of figure out, okay, what's going on. So let's look. The instructor we hire because she does not love you leads you into the deep water. Okay, so earlier in this we have the instructor. In the middle we have something here about this water in the deep end, and she's leading you into the deep water. So in my mind here, this is starting to make more sense. I see a pool. I think this is Julia. And here's a person over here. And this is what I'm thinking. This is the deep end, right? And I know the instructor we hire, because she does not love you, I still don't get this, leads you into the deep water. Okay, so she's leading her into the deep water where the water is darker. She has these open arms. This is how I draw open arms. Don't make fun of this. Her open encouraging arms that never get nearer are merciless for your sake. So we know, and again, maybe I don't quite understand merciless for your sake yet, but I know that she's not coming towards her, right? This is not happening. So she's waiting for Julia. She's leading her into this deep end. And those arms are never getting nearer, even though they're encouraging. They're encouraging and they're also merciless. Again, paradoxical. So we have this paradoxical. We have what's called juxtaposition going on. So Juxtaposition is when you place two things side by side for emphasis. For example, this is a white piece of paper. If I were to place this dark black, dark blue object on it, you would be able to see that object much more clearly. However, when I take this away out of the photo, you can see that the black is harder to distinguish. So with juxtaposition, this is placing two things side by side for emphasis, and this can be anything. It doesn't have to stick to one term, etc. So placing things side by side for emphasis. And the reason why I'm defining this for you is we have this juxtaposition here, again a paradox, of encouraging arms next to merciless. So I'm seeing the juxtaposition of opposites, of encouragement but no mercy. Down here I saw nothing with the hardest thing she's ever done. I saw over here living in something that's deadly. So I'm seeing this juxtaposition of opposites. Okay, next stanza. You will dream this water always. Okay, so Julia, maybe you're going to dream this always. What could that possibly mean? Am I still having trouble with this? Maybe you're going to remember this over and over again. Maybe you'll have nightmares about this. Where nothing draws nearer. Okay, and we know that this nothing, that our swim teacher never draws nearer. But in fact, that might be a metaphor for life too, right? So let's keep that in mind. Is maybe this isn't just about a swimming trip. This is also about life. Wasting your valuable breath. Wow, that's just, okay. He doesn't just say wasting your breath. He makes a point to say valuable. And this really sticks out to me as a word choice that is important. So I'm going to star this. You will scream for your mother. Again, you will scream. That's such a horrific word. Something so frightening. This isn't just a normal swim lesson. So this comes out for me here. Only your mother is drowning forever in the thin air. Down at the deep end. Alright, so at this deep end then, here is the mother. And I'm going to draw her with a skirt. I'm not trying to be stereotypical, just my drawings are really bad. And to distinguish, I'm just going to put an M above here. And maybe the father is Scottish and he's wearing a kilt. I don't know. So here is the mother. And she is wading down at the deep end, but she's drowning forever in thin air. Alright, so maybe I'm still having trouble with that. And I want to come through and think about it some more later. She's not doing anything. So she's watching this scene, and here are my eyes, my googly eyes. She's watching the scene. She's not doing anything. And she's never done anything but harder. And I am beside her. So we've already had a guess that the father is the speaker, I. So maybe he's down here too. Okay? So they're both just kind of watching this, not doing anything. Why? Why? Why would someone watch this but not do it? Not do anything? Okay, so that's probably central to the message of the poem. Alright, and then we come through the next part. I am beside her in this imagination. Okay, so who's the her here? If we think the you is Julia, there's a possibility of two females. So it's important to distinguish, and I'm pushing the paper up, sorry, who the her is. I am beside her in this imagination. Okay, and I still don't understand what is this. We are waiting where the water is darker. Okay, so we're confirmed here that they are in fact waiting on the deep end. You are over your head, so Julia's, in this water like this, and it's over her head, screaming. You are learning your way toward us. So she's learning how to get there. You are learning how, in the helpless water, it's with our skill we live in what kills us. All right, so digest that a little bit. And on my third time, I always tell students to read poems 3 times. It becomes clearer. Text that is hard, that is difficult, becomes clearer the more that you hang with it. What makes someone good at critiquing and analyzing literature or nonfiction or anything put in front of them is the fact that they stick with things that they don't understand, things that they find interesting, but are maybe don't have meaning, things that are curious, etc. So if you give up, you will never get to that point. And in literature and in language, both classes, lang and lit, you're going to take in that sequence, you're going to come to things that you don't understand immediately. Now, the problem with that is that most people give up. And that's not what analysis is about. It's not about coming to a spoon-fed answer. It's about playing ball in this ballpark of literature and language and making educated guesses based on what they're doing. Think of it this way. It's like watching a game of baseball or watching a game of soccer or football, and you're commenting like an ESPN narrator on what the players are doing. But instead of a game of baseball, you're doing it with literature and with nonfiction text. Poetry, prose, fiction, nonfiction. So you're commenting on them. So if a person makes a very complex play, that's the most interesting thing to get to. While it might be hard to analyze, and that's why sports announcers and ESPN and things like that have slow motion, right? We don't have that. What we can do is we can slow down and we can reread and we can look at things a few times, okay? So that's like our slow motion. We want to focus in on things that we don't get, we don't understand, stick with it and come to meaning. Last time through, I'm using my green marker. The instructor we hire. So I'm thinking this is a swim coach already, judging by my thing down here. Swim coach. And I pretty much have all the details now. Because she does not love you. So they hire her because she doesn't love her. Why? What can she do? Well, she can probably make those tough choices. And we can get that from other evidence in the poem here, that the parents could not do something like this. Why? Because it's probably heart-wrenching to watch your daughter try to struggle through something, right? Something that's over her head, practically drowning in the water. She leads you into the deep water, the deep end where the water is darker. Okay, and so we have this connotation of darker here too. I always talk about, when I do this poem in class, I always talk about the sounds, water, darker, etc. I'm not going to do that in the interest of time right now. So, and because I'm not teaching the poem, I'm using this poem to teach something else. Okay. Her open, encouraging arms that never get nearer are merciless for your sake. Okay, so they hire her because she can sit back and do this and be kind of cruel, right? Because this isn't her kid, she doesn't have to watch it, and she's seen all these other kids that are, swimming, go through all this, so she understands, right? But the parents wouldn't be able to do this. And so the reason why I chose this for content is that, and I was saying earlier, things are going to get hard in AP Lang and AP Literature, but teachers and techs and the College Board aren't being merciless because they get enjoyment out of it. They're doing it for the sake of becoming a better swimmer in the pool of knowledge, a better swimmer in literature and in language. Okay? So that's why I chose this poem for this content. So this instructor, while they care about you, they'll never have that familial bond, according to the poet, right? That your family does for you. And so that's why they hire her, is because she can sit back and watch this occur and not get involved. You will dream this water always, where nothing draws nearer. Again, I still think that this is, him talking to his daughter, to Julia, saying, you're going to remember this for your whole life, and you're going to dream about it, and you're going to waste your valuable breath. Again, valuable sticks out to me. You will scream for your mother. That definitely sticks out. Only your mother is drowning forever in thin air. What does it mean to drown in thin air? So I think of for example, hyperventilating, like I'm drowning in the thin air because she's so nervous, right? So she's so nervous that she's drowning in the thin air. All right, and that's what's going on here. Down at the deep end, she is doing nothing. So she's hyperventilating, she's scared, she's not doing anything, and it's so hard not to do anything because what does she want to do in probably, or what does she want to do? What does she want to do is jump in and save her daughter, right? She doesn't want her to struggle. She doesn't want her to do these things, and she's never done anything harder because she knows that this is best for her. And I am beside her, the father. I am beside her. He's just making a comment. They're both here. And he repeats this again. I am beside her. As if he can't believe it, right? Like a statement of the incredible. I am beside her in this imagination. Okay, so this phantasm, this thing that's going on, this imagination, this imaginary scenario. We are waiting where the water is darker. You are over your head screaming. So they're imagining, and this is why Mom's probably so freaked out, that the daughter's going to drown. So in this imagination, she's watching. Screaming, you are learning your way toward us. You are learning how, in the helpless water, it is with our skill we live in what kills us. So that, as we go through life, we get skills, i.e. swimming, in this case, which allows us to live in something that would otherwise kill us. Okay, so we learn that we have to develop skills to live in what otherwise would kill us. And this is why I chose this poem, is because I think it's very apt, is that you have to develop skills to analyze text, to comment on it, and and if you get to a certain point, even enjoy it, like I do, and you're becoming a commentator and analyzing the complex bits of interesting like language and literature and nonfiction and fiction that come together. It's a beautiful thing. All right, so now we can probably fill out the rest of this. The father is the speaker. Check. Occasion, it's a swim lesson as well. Check. It is to Julia. The purpose of this poem is probably to kind of give some, I don't know, like backstory, or not backstory, but as a parental or like sagely advice, sagacious advice to his daughter, like looking back, right? So for Julia, he's probably looking back and he's saying, well, this is why we did it, and in life you're going to have to learn to do this anyway. Okay, so that's there. The subject is a swim lesson. And I'm going through this quickly because, one, we're going to revisit soapstone a lot, and two, I want to get to the meat and potatoes of this. The tone, then, is the speaker's attitude towards the subject. So what is the speaker feeling towards this subject? And usually we do tone in two ways. We pick two words, blank and blank, and they can either be complementary, meaning they go together. I should have put a P there. Comp and comp. Or they can be contrasting. Okay, and then one is totally different from the other. And if we saw a shift in here, we could do that as well. I'll let you think about the tone, kind of ruminate on this. We're not going to hit tone quite yet, and this is often the most complex, so I often table this for later in the course because tone becomes complex. And we can't talk about tone unless we talk about other things, such as what I brought out earlier, like diction, which is word choice, valuable, scream, etc. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So what I want to do is set up what's called a literary triangle and use that. So on the bottom, we're going to draw the base of a triangle, and the base of the triangle is going to be our device. On this side of the triangle, we're going to have a quote, and on this side of the triangle, we're going to have commentary. So that is going to be our analysis of what's going on. So I'm going to fold this also into our three appeals: ethos, if you're Greek; logos, I'm probably butchering the Greek; and pathos, etc. Okay, so credibility, logic, and emotion. Okay, a lot of times the word pathetic, that's where this comes from. You can have a pathetical appeal. That doesn't mean that like it is in fact pathetic, that it's like a weak appeal, but that means an emotional appeal. So emotional and pathetical are the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to fold this in together. I'm going to look at the word and the line here, wasting your valuable breath. I'm looking at the word valuable. And so I'm going to draw a triangle over here, over on this side, wasting your valuable, I probably spelled that wrong, sorry, breath. I know I spelled out Cajun wrong too. I should probably go back and fix that. It'll bother me later. Alright, hey, sorry, my cat's trying to get the paper. Alright, so on my left hand side I have my quote. Over here, my device. So I'm using the word, maybe I want to go ahead and just circle this. I'm using the word valuable. Anytime I analyze words on a word-by-word basis, this is what we call diction. So diction is a word analysis, which means basically what words does the author use and why? And here's the big no-no. We never want to say the author uses diction. Why? Because, and we could simply term this word choice as well, because all authors use words and all authors have word choice. So to say the author uses diction, it doesn't say anything. Okay? So you never say the author uses diction. Later on we'll learn to classify this. We're actually going to get into diction right after this, which is why this is a good segue. You can have emotional diction, you could have low-level diction, you could have positive diction, negative diction, fancy diction, etc. But you have to classify it. You can't just say the author uses diction. Okay, so over here, I'm going to put diction because this is my device, because I'm choosing to focus in on this one word, valuable. Now, your valuable breath. What does this do for me when I think of valuable? I'm just kind of commenting on this. So, something that cannot be lost. It also kind of appeals to the audience's emotion. So in the rhetorical triangle, you're always thinking of, okay, who's the author speaking to? What are they trying to get out of it? Why are they speaking to them? And then how are they doing it? So he's speaking to his daughter here. And when he says valuable breath, what does that word valuable bring up? Well, it is definitely emotionally charged, right? And so this is what I'm talking about, is like people don't use pathos. He is appealing to her emotion. So it is a pathetical appeal, but you don't say the author uses pathos or pathos, however you want to say it, if you're Greek. What you're going to do is you're going to say, okay, how is the author appealing to that emotional appeal? And so this is, while this is an informal triangle to kind of get you thinking about how to analyze text, this is how you're going to start structuring your essays when you're doing commentary. So through the selection of the word valuable, the author conjures an emotional link by noting he understands just how precious her breath is, despite not doing anything to save her breath, I guess, would be a better. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I'm talking about this emotional appeal, this pathetical appeal, but I'm talking about it in a way that's through a rhetorical device. And that rhetorical device, for me right now, is diction. Normally, this would go inside the triangle. Of course, we don't have the room for it, so some people like to put it out to the right. Some people like to put it in the triangle, and then they write however much they can, and then they say, okay, the more that I wrote in here, however high the triangle is, that means that it's more important, and I could talk about that. So what I'm doing here is I'm showing you how to set up this appeal to emotion. Okay, he's obviously appealing to her emotion, but he's doing it through diction. He's saying, hey, I understood just how precious and valuable your breath was, and that, struggling in the deep end was a terrible thing, but he couldn't do anything, right? Because he has to let her learn how to develop skills on her own. He can't breathe for her, right? And so that's how he develops this link, right? So we don't say the author uses pathos, okay? What we do is instead we say the author, through this device, is eliciting an emotional appeal, okay? I said an emotional link. You could say emotional appeal. You could say anything in that vein. Elicits empathy, solicits empathy, conjures emotional response, anything in that vein. But you can't say the author uses pathos. You can't say the author uses diction. That doesn't work. Okay, what you're doing is like, that's like saying, if you're a baseball player, the pitcher uses a baseball. That's, it doesn't tell you anything. But what you can say is that the pitcher grabbed the seams on the right, made a downward motion, and threw a curveball. And that's how you're commenting on this. And in the same way, you're doing this here. Is that, okay, I'm explaining these detailed steps the author's taking to appeal to that broader sense of emotion. Okay, so you're always getting to that. You're not ever using the words ethos, logos, and pathos in an essay, okay, on your AP exam, because these will get you dinged. You already there's a stereotype against this for graders. Whenever they get in the room and they see this, most of the time already in their head, even if you use this word effectively, which most people, don't do so well, then they're already thinking this is a placeholder for an idea. So I have Christmas cards going on here, but they already put you down in their minds, even though they're not supposed to. There's a stigma against using these words. Okay, so what you're doing is you're using these as a springboard to get to real ideas. All right, so what did we learn today? Let's recap. Well, we've learned that we have to read things multiple times to kind of figure out what's going on. We learned that we have to struggle with difficult text, and that everyone struggles with difficult text. When I first read this poem, I had to read it through 3 times as well. 3 times 2. My Peter Piper picked a pickle there. But everyone does this. It doesn't matter if you're a teacher, a scholar of literature, a doctor of literature. Everyone struggles through things, and you have to stay with it. It's that deep water, and you learn skills to cope with. You've learned a little bit about soapstone if you haven't heard that already. These terms you should start committing to memory, even though we'll get to them a little bit later. Oxymoron is a 2-word paradox, like jumbo shrimp. A paradox is something that's true and untrue at the same time. You learned about juxtaposition, that is placing things side by side for emphasis. You've also learned that tone is the speaker's attitude toward the subject. And even though we didn't go through tone just yet, because I want to teach you a little bit more about diction and syntax, etc., then you should still know that it exists, and that's the definition that I use for it, and what is a commonplace AP definition. Okay? You've also learned how to draw a literary triangle or an analysis triangle. This could be used for literature or language. You have the quote on one side, you have the commentary on the other, and the device down here. Why? What does this teach you to do? This teaches you to write your essay. In your essay, you're going to take a quote. You're going to talk about the device that's being used, and you're going to comment on how that device is effective towards the end goal, the rhetorical intent of the entire piece. So here I gave you an example of wasting your valuable breath is your quote. The author is using diction, and then I gave you some commentary, just a couple of things. We could have definitely gone more and more, but in the interest of time, I didn't do that. So what I'm going to assign you next then is I'm going to give you a nonfiction piece. I'm going to ask you to read it through a couple of times. I'm going to ask you to annotate. And when you annotate, your basic annotations are here, but things you start recognizing from your vocabulary, chapter 1, for example, if you recognize a counter argument, go ahead and annotate that out. I'm going to ask you to do a soapstone, and then what I'm going to start asking you to do is, as I'm asking you to read this, I'm going to simultaneously teach you a unit on diction. So we're going to look specifically at diction in a piece and how an author uses diction as a tool to achieve a means. Remember, A.P. Lang and literature is all about what is the author doing, what is their rhetorical intent. You'll hear this in A.P. Lang. Rhetorical intent for the whole piece. What are they doing? Why do they make this speech? What does it matter? Why are they doing this? Number 2, how? Oh, you get a close-up of the kitty. How are they achieving this? So what devices are they using? For example, in this one we use diction. And then why? This is the big one. Oh, I'm running out of ink here. Is why. Why are they using this device to accomplish this goal? Why is this effective? Or is it not effective? Sometimes you can comment on that as well. But why did the author use the word valuable to achieve their overall intent? That's what we're thinking here. Why, how, what? What is the author doing it? How are they doing it? And why are they doing it in that way? Okay? So that's what you should take from today's lesson. Have a great day, and I'll see you back on Thursday.